Hello folks and welcome to the first weekend warm-up of the 2021 Formula One season. Welcome back to Bahrain. Doesn't seem 2 minutes since we were here last. Will Buxton with you as always, and it is a new season and a new look, both for Formula One with new driver lineups at pretty much all the teams, and also for us on the weekend warm-up. I would like to introduce to you my friend David Alorca, who many of you will know, I'm sure, from hosting pretty much every sport under the planet, but Formula One was your first love, right?
It is, and it always has been my first love, Formula One. So it's beautiful being out here in Bahrain for the start of the 2021 season. I'm looking forward to it.
And we got you working straight off the bat today. You've been interviewing so many of the drivers, but we started, of course, down here at Mercedes for you today. They are the big talking point coming out of pre-season testing. Are their troubles real, or is it all just a big game?
I think we're only going to know fully on Sunday itself, but both drivers basically kind of explained and said that they do believe that those troubles are real. They do think that Red Bull are going to pose a really, really massive threat. Lewis himself said that's their biggest threat yet.
And this is it, Lewis going for an 8th Formula One World Championship. Valtteri really hoping that he can take his first. Never looked stronger, never looked better. And out of the two of them, I'd say from what I saw in testing, Valtteri was looking the more at one, more comfortable in the car. But you spoke to them both, you spoke to Lewis. Why don't we hear from Lewis right now? The reigning world champion, 7 times, going for his 8th, Sir Lewis Hamilton.
I don't really come into the season thinking a lot about another title. I think I'm in a different place in my life where I've realized and kind of my what I think that I'm here for, and I'm really enjoying the challenges that I'm facing and being able to speak up and seeing change, you know, and trying to help people. And it drives me to be able to do what I do. And you know, last year in places like Italy, where I wore the Breonna Taylor shirt, that drive that I had to get me on the top of that podium to be able to give the voice. Stories are so important, and change is needed, and it can't come fast enough.
So if we genuinely think that Mercedes are in trouble, that puts these guys, for the first time in a long time, on the front foot coming into a Formula One season.
Without a shadow of a doubt. And both drivers kind of remained quite coy on it, but we can see that they were both quietly confident.
I like what you said earlier. I'm going to steal your line because it was really good. You said there was a bit of verbal sandbagging from both of the teams going on. I love that. I'm sorry I stole it. But as you say, Mercedes playing the expectations down, pinning these guys as the favourites. These guys saying, don't pin us as favourites. Mercedes are just going to steal it when we get into free practice 1. But the vibe coming out of this team is only positive.
It is, without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, Checo basically said it's going to take him quite a few races to get used to the car and used to the surroundings, but he feels happy to be in a car that's going to allow him to properly challenge this season.
And this is it, first time in Checo's career when he's going to go into a race knowing he can fight for minimum a podium rather than a lucky 5th or 6th place and a fortuitous podium if it fell into his hands. But Max Verstappen won the last round of last season, enters this season potentially with the best car in the field underneath him. How does he feel coming into what could be his biggest year yet in Formula One?
It's always nice, of course, to have a test like that. I think everything was running very smooth, so very pleased about that. But yeah, there are no guarantees. We have to keep improving because the other teams are not standing still as well. And yeah, we have to wait until qualifying to really see the performance of all the other teams as well. But yeah, let's hope that it's going to be a good one.
Talking to the Mercedes guys earlier this weekend, they said that we would be sick of hearing from Christian Horner this year. It's Lawrence, everyone. Don't worry. We didn't get rid of him.
Brutal.
That we didn't get rid of you, or that they were going to get sick of hearing from Christian.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, that's the thing. And then I just spoke to the Red Bull guys and they went, they're lying.
They've been watching too much Netflix.
They're lying. You can never watch too much Netflix. Not a certain programme. Anyway, it's doing rather well. Anyway, hello, mate.
Hello, nice to see you.
McLaren, what's going on down here? Because they had a monstrously good pre-season and it seems that they're as confused. Well, they say they're confused about why people are bigging them up for the year.
So everyone in this paddock is talking about McLaren being the 3rd best team here. And then I asked Lando about that today. He was like, I don't know where everyone's heard that from. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I'm
like,
delighted that you're telling me this.
We were
but,
watching
like,
the numbers like that.
Exactly, but I think they're playing everything down, much like they did last year. Lando's feeling pretty confident, actually, going into this season. I feel like this is his best pre-season yet, and he needs to put his foot under the table very firmly. With Daniel joining the team this year, he's got to assert his authority now. You just get that vibe from Lando this year, that he wants to put his foot down.
Everyone's expecting them to be really pally and chummy.
No, don't think so. I mean, they're not going to fall out, but I don't think they're going to be pally chummy.
Daniel has immediately settled in, though. The car looked great, some really interesting novelties on it. Talking to James Key earlier, he was surprised that nobody had gone for that floor innovation that McLaren have. But smart car, sensible stuff. As you say, looking like the top of the midfield at the moment, although heaven knows after testing. These guys, though, Aston Martin, formerly known as Racing Point, I think one of the bigger unknowns.
These are the great unknowns, I think, because we just didn't see enough from testing from either Lance or Sebastian to really get a read on where they are at the moment.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, the car that they've got, with all those bits that they're taking from Mercedes within the rules, of course, you've got to say that they're going to have a machine that's going to be able to challenge at the sharp end of the midfield.
But will they? Because everyone's talking about this low rake philosophy not really playing out with the new rules that sort of scrubbed all of that downforce off the back with the new floors. That's maybe why Mercedes is struggling. That's why Aston Martin might struggle. They've got the Mercedes rear suspension and front suspension. If Mercedes struggle, they're going to struggle too, because the philosophy is ultimately the same.
That's true, but then I also feel that Mercedes are probably going to come back fighting. They've had a few days to really work on it, so it doesn't mean that these guys can't do the same.
Seb, how was he looking today? How was he sounding? Because obviously it was a very full-lawn, browbeaten Seb that left Ferrari.
I think he's looking like a man reborn, to be honest. I think he's enjoying the challenge that he's got at Aston Martin. It's an opportunity for him to rewrite the final chapter in his career, and I think he's really excited by it. He's so mature these days that he doesn't really get down when things go wrong. So today he was remaining positive.
And he said after testing, because he had the lion's share of the problems in testing, he said, if I was a younger man, I'd be worried right about now, but I'm not. Lance can't really lose this year, can he? If he loses to a four-time world champion, he's lost to a four-time world champion. If he looks good in even a couple of races, he's looked good against Sebastian Vettel. So it's a no-lose scenario for him.
Exactly, and he's going to gain so much from being alongside that four-time world champion. He's going to learn so much, and I think that's partly what Lawrence Stroll wanted when he recruited Sebastian.
And interestingly, Seb also said he's got something to learn this year from his new team, which I thought was really fascinating about how he's approaching the year. But we talk about approach. Another team with a new name, another team that's got an awful lot to prove. Alpine, Esteban Ocon and Fernando Alonso. I think one of the biggest questions after testing is over these guys, about whether they've been hiding their hand or not, and whether they sit maybe as far down the order as some people are expecting.
I think they're quite liking their position towards the bottom of that pack, because people aren't really talking about them, and that's probably going to give them the opportunity maybe to spring a few surprises, particularly with, like you said, Fernando coming back, Esteban wanting to stamp his authority. I spoke to Davide Brivio today, first time that I had a chance to spend some time with him for the pre-race
What's he
show.
like?
And he's such a lovely guy.
I've not met him yet. Is he lovely?
He's so excited about this project. There's so much personality there. And you can just see he's a great man manager. He spent so much time with the drivers already, getting a vibe of how that's going. And he knows how important it is for them to all gel as a team.
That is key, because, of course, Fernando Alonso, while a brilliant racing driver and a two-time Formula One world champion, a three-time world champion, given that he also has a world endurance title under his belt now, has not always played nicely. Let's hear from the returning champion, Fernando Alonso. Number 14 is back in Formula One, back at the team with whom he won his world championships. Let's hear about how he's looking towards his 2021.
I think we have to see where we are, first of all, in terms of how competitive we feel after the first couple of weekends. But I think a happy 2021 will be being regular in the points, fighting in the Q3, having the possibilities to fight for podiums like Renault did last year with 3 podiums. I think that will feel a good season for us.
Now, David, Ferrari had a difficult season. It was their worst season in 40 years last year. It wasn't the best. I think that's an understatement.
Yeah, no, it surely weren't the best season. But I think they, this season, are quietly confident that they'll do a little bit better than they did last season.
Well, here's the thing. You've been talking to the guys. We were seeing over testing how well the car was going. The biggest thing for them is that the power unit which was their Achilles heel last year, is much improved. All three Ferrari teams have said it's a massive step forward. The car's less draggy. It appears to be a more workable car to the driver's desires. But still, it's Ferrari. Ferrari expects nothing better than podiums, wins, championships. From speaking to the guys, do you think they've made that kind of step forward, or is it too much too soon?
No, as you know, even from the favourites, nobody's puffing out their chest and speaking like they're going to take the crown this year. Personally, I don't think that's their kind of position or what they're looking at this year. But Charles did say the car is a lot more comfortable this year as well. He's a lot more comfortable with it. I spoke to him about being the senior driver now in Ferrari, which he finds quite funny to think of, especially because obviously he's been there a longer time. But it's looking like it's going to be a very good and interesting season for them.
It's going to be fascinating. Again, nobody knows in this compacted midfield who sits where after a testing 3 days that really posed as many questions as gave us answers. One of the other guys you spoke to today, Carlos Sainz, of course, getting himself fitted in at his brand new team, comes off the back of a sensational couple of seasons at McLaren. Can he help turn this team's fortunes around like he did at the once great and now recovering McLaren?
It feels like it's been a good process for me, to be honest. The fact that I moved to Italy in January and I managed to do 3 months of intensive time in Maranello has helped me a lot to feel at home in Ferrari, and now we're here in our first race. Honestly, cannot wait, quite excited about it. But at the same time, I'm gonna make sure that I enjoy. I enjoy my first weekend with Ferrari because I know that in 20, 30 years time, I will always remember my first race with Ferrari. So I'm gonna try and maximize it and enjoy it.
And so to the team that all the teams in the midfield are looking at, Lawrence, and it's AlphaTauri, because they had a brilliant 3 days of testing.
It was so good that I think Franz Tost, he always talks about being 5th in the championship. I genuinely think he thinks this is the year that that's going to happen, because they had such a strong test. They've got such a strong car.
Only 5th?
Well, let's not get carried away.
Well, let's get carried away. Second quickest. A huge number of laps on the board. Honda bringing in a power unit for Red Bull and AlphaTauri this year, which some people think has the potential to be the power unit of the sport in 2021. Pierre Gasly at the top of his game. Mm-hmm. We've both read that amazing article that he wrote earlier this week, and he spoke today about how much presence it's given him and allowed him to move on from the difficulties of the last couple of years. And he didn't hold back when talking about how Red Bull treated him.
No, I think that's that inner confidence that we're getting from Pierre now. I think he's really grown as a person, and that's transferring onto the track. And we're just seeing those results come, the consistency he's building, but also the way that he's working with the team. The team love him. Yeah. And you can really feel that those guys are moving somewhere at the moment.
And he's been working out over the winter. He's stacked. It's ridiculous. But of course, it's not just him at the team. One of the most exciting rookies in the sport this year, Yuki Tsunoda, who set that second quickest lap time in pre-season testing, admittedly opening DRS pretty much before he'd even hit the apex on most of the corners. But it was quality laps from Yuki. He's super exciting. He's amazingly young, only 100 race starts in anything before he's got to Formula One. And yet the expectation on him to deliver immediately for AlphaTauri is sky high, and you're going to see why.
I'm really looking forward. First is I use a little bit cheating for your DRS, but have a bit on the other side. There's a reason to why I was using DRS, but I'm not trying to make in purpose like bad way. It just I thought just if I before this testing, if I mentioned that we have something DRS testing, so I thought that day, and there's a DRS test. I was just using it, and also I thought other guys using, and I didn't have any of the information from team, so I just used it. But yeah, test went well. I think the car looks fine. I don't know other teams exactly what they're doing, but I think for the car, good improvement, especially for the engine as well from Honda. I think when I see in top seat, it looks a really good improvement from last year. So I'm really looking forward to it.
And so to the other Alfa in the sport, Alfa Romeo.
So another team that had a stonking pre-season test, only 3 days, but they were super consistent, almost bulletproof. The number of laps, the amount of data that they collected was really encouraging, to the point where I think Kimi Räikkönen was thinking there might even be top 10 finishes in that car this year. You spoke to them earlier. What did you make?
I said to Kimi, you did nearly 3 Grand Prix distances on the last day, and Kimi, being Kimi, sort of said, I'm not going to try and do an impression, it's too early in the year, but he said basically it doesn't mean anything if the car's not quick.
True.
And he's been around long enough to know that testing doesn't mean a thing unless the pace is actually there. But we've already talked about that Ferrari power unit being a massive step forward. The car itself looks to be a huge step forward. Antonio, when I said to him, look, a lot of people are talking about this team, expecting you to have made the biggest leap forward potentially of any of the teams in the sport. He's like, are people really saying that?
Wow.
And I was like, yeah, people are really saying that, because the combination of the two, it's looking good. And they may pull themselves out of that bottom 3 fight. The only question mark is, if they have made that step, how far into that midfield fight does that step actually thrust them? And that's a really fascinating point.
I think so, and a lot of that is probably going to come down to the power unit, just because that was 4th in the pecking order last year. Yeah. They're going to be hoping to be right back up, buffering up against the Honda and the Mercedes power unit. If they can do that, that's an easy kind of step up into the back of that next pack.
We talk about the bottom 3, this may be the bottom 1, and we're not saying that to be harsh to the guys and girls in Banbury at the Haas F1 team, but as they've already said, they will not be developing their car throughout this year. What they've got is what they've got, except it's not. Because they don't actually have their proper car, and they won't have it until the next race. So from the next race, that's it. And how difficult is that for 2 rookies?
It's tough, of course it is. It was unfortunate that they're not going to have a fair few parts that they are going to introduce in Imola. But once we see that car, that final car, the plan for them that year is just got to make the best of it, develop it as best they can, obviously with what they've got, no new bits, and just hope that the likes of Mick and Nikita can settle in nicely. They can have a good baseline and just kind of let the team guide them through this year.
In a way, it kind of takes the pressure off. You know, Yuki's got that pressure up at AlphaTauri if they've got the rocket ship everyone expects. For Nikita and Mick, there is no expectation, there is no pressure, because ultimately qualifying any higher than 19th and 20th will be a result in and of itself for them. But Mick, you're going to hear from him now. Super great kid, Formula 2 champion, and even with a mask on, impossible to hide the smile emanating from him as he achieves his lifelong dream to emulate his father and race in Formula 1.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited. I'm happy to be here. It's obviously already said a few times, it's a lifelong dream. It's kind of coming true now, and I'm just really, really happy, really. My mental set is definitely on, learning as much as I can. It is what it is. We have to take our chances in the races that we know we maybe have a bit of pace, and then really take it from there. It's not great, but it's definitely something we'll manage and for sure stay motivated about.
And then we come to a team which may be one of the good news stories of the year. Williams have taken a clear step forward from last year, 3 really good days of pre-season testing. George and Nicky both feeling really positive.
And I think one of the strong points you could take out of what George said today was he's eyeing points, not every weekend, but at certain points this year. And that's a massive step forward for a team that really struggled last year.
Now, interestingly, George has said the car will be a yo-yo this year. It's dialed in towards certain tracks, not others, because they want to maximise their points potential at a few races this year. Haas obviously scoring 3 points last year, Alfa Romeo scoring 8, so if they go to a couple of tracks and the car's dialed into that, great chances.
Huge difference.
Nicky said, yeah, we didn't mean to do that. It's just the way the car is, so we've got to make the most of it. So it wasn't an intentional thing, but it is what they're going to have to deal with, which brings us to the end of the weekend warm-up. Folks, thank you so much for tuning in. I think we need to go with a couple of predictions to finish off today, because why not? Lawrence, what have you got for this weekend?
So I bumped into Lewis earlier today and he was in such a good mood. I think he has a feeling that Mercedes is going to bounce back, and I think they're going to have a real fight with Red Bull this weekend.
Interesting stuff. I am fascinated at looking at the McLaren versus AlphaTauri fight, which I think will be for the top of the midfield. What about you, David?
Gents, you guys have done this long enough to know that you cannot make any predictions on the first race. We have no idea which way the cards are going to fall.
It's true.
We know there's been so much sandbagging. There's only been 3 days of testing.
True.
I'm just super excited, to see the way it all pans out.
Couldn't have put it any better than that. David, thank you so much, man. Lawrence, thank you so much. This is it. This is your new look for the year. Thank you so much for joining us. Join us again throughout the weekend. Enjoy it. 2021 is here. But from all three of us to all of you, thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.